This is Hillary Clinton's speech. I'm sorry, this isn't my speech.
Hillary Clinton must not be president.
Hillary Clinton couldn't be here today.
I ran against the Clinton political machine.
When Hillary Clinton travels, there's going to need to be 2 planes, one for her and her entourage and one for her baggage.
Let us dive into the political waters and see about emerging unscathed. Our guest has been covering doings inside the Beltway for such publications as the Wall Street Journal, now hitting the beat for the Weekly Standard. All things political. Let's welcome back senior writer Mark Hemingway. Mark, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thank you for having me back.
Mark, here we sit now with a new book ready to hit the shelves on May 5th. Clinton Cash, the untold story of how and why foreign governments and businesses helped make Bill and Hillary rich. Rand Paul says it's big news, it'll shock people and make everybody question the candidacy of Hillary Rodham Clinton. All right, look, the Clintons are pretty smart politically. They knew something like this was going to be coming sooner or later. Is this really, do you believe, and again, we haven't seen the book yet, but will this be as explosive as everybody seems to think it will be?
Well, it's hard to tell without having seen it, but I will say that Peter Schweizer's last 2 books really actually did deliver the goods when it came to corruption in Congress. And not only that, Schweizer gained a lot of credibility with 60 Minutes and some other mainstream news outlets that covered his work extensively, in part because even though he's a right-leaning fellow who works for the conservative Hoover Institution at Stanford, he really did some damning reporting on Republicans. So if he comes out with this stuff that makes Hillary look like she's doing some sort of pay-for-play at the State Department, well, it's going to be really hard for mainstream news outlets to dismiss this stuff out of hand. Should be really interesting to see what he's got.
Mark, here comes the next big issue, because Mrs. Clinton has already been hammered away with so many different issues and so many different controversies, and yet she still has a commanding lead over Republicans. The question is, will something like this make any difference whatsoever in the mind of voters who don't seem to care what happens?
Well, I think so. There are already some polls out showing that Hillary Clinton is behind in swing states like Florida to a handful of Republican candidates. So, I mean, I think she's definitely vulnerable, and she's certainly a lot more vulnerable in the polls than she was when the emails, before the email scandal started a few months ago. So, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you don't take a figure like Hillary Clinton and knock her out in one blow. It's going to be the death of 1,000 paper cuts. So, we'll see whether or not she survives this primary process, especially since there's no competitive Democratic primary. You're going to have, a whole bunch of Republican candidates. They're going to be all training their fire on her, and it's going to result in a lot more coverage that's negative for her, I think, than vice versa.
All the Republicans went after Hillary Clinton over the weekend. Everybody had a standard Hillary Clinton joke. Do you really think it's the best way to attack her at this point without talking about any of their own policies?
I don't think it hurts. I mean, the thing here is that I think they're all trying to get Hillary Clinton to respond, because if Hillary Clinton responds to these individual criticisms, it will elevate the person delivering whatever criticisms that caused her to,
So we're talking about, in many ways, Republican gotchas is what they're looking for.
A little bit, yeah. But also, this is what campaigning is all about. You're supposed to rattle your opponent and, see how well they handle the stressful situations. You can learn a lot from that. If candidates don't handle barbs well, then, that says a lot about whether or not they're worthy of leading in voters' minds.
I've only got about a minute left here, and there's already a bunch of numbers out there, certainly in New Jersey, that say that Christie is failing and falling behind miserably. I get the feeling that he went after entitlements this weekend. He actually said something, and a lot of the other Republican candidates may now have to follow his lead, but I tend to think that all the reports of his political death are pretty well exaggerated.
I think that's true. I mean, I wouldn't be overly optimistic about his chances at this point, because there's been so much, a blizzard of such bad news about New Jersey corruption. Whether or not it's fair or not, it's been voters' minds. But having said that, Chris Christie is a phenomenal retail politician, and the fact that he would get out on the stump again is going to give people a chance to get reacquainted and see him, in his natural habitat. And I can't help but think that that's going to result in a lot more talk about him being a viable candidate. Whether or not it pans out, I don't know, but I think that people are going to rediscover a little bit what they liked about the guy in the first place before all the scandal.
I got about 20 seconds left. Is there one issue you think the Republicans should be hammering away on, getting away from Hillary and going to an issue?
Well, I just think that middle-class issues are going to be of the utmost importance in this issue, and people have figured out that income inequality is a losing message for Democrats. And Hillary's figured that out. That's why she's picked up on this everyday Americans theme. But Democratic policies for minimum wage, for for middle class mobility, like minimum wage increases and Thomas Piketty's watered down Marxism that they've been hyping, I mean, are like 50 years old. Republicans have much more innovative ideas about, family friendly tax policies like Mike Lee's been pushing that I think are going to be a lot more attractive to voters once they understand what policies are in play.
And we're only just getting started. Here come the games. Mark Hemingway from the Weekly Standard. Thanks for joining us, Mark. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
Take care. Americans fearing for their life. They may have been forgotten by their government in Yemen. Next on MidPoint.